right. Before we conclude, I'd like to turn to the present moment following Donald Trump's re-election. So many have argued that outright climate crisis denial has evolved, so either into far-right ecological narratives, sometimes called eco-fascism, or into capitalist decarbonization strategies that we've just talked about. So Adrian Buller, for example, has identified a palpable shift towards these tendencies. Yet Trump's revival of the "Drill Baby Drill" slogan during his inauguration in January challenges this assumption. His appointment of Chris Wright, a former oil executive and vocal climate denialist, as energy secretary signals a renewed push for aggressive fossil fuel expansion. Andreas Malm and Will Carden have recently described this as the era of fossil overshoot, so the era where ruling classes openly accept the failure of the 1.5-degree target set by the Paris Agreement and instead emphasize carbon removal technologies. But Trump's energy policies also appear deeply contradictory. On one hand, promoting domestic mining of battery materials to position the US as the world's top lithium producer, while on the other undermining EV and wind industries. So he has declared an energy emergency while simultaneously aiming to double the exports of liquefied natural gas by 2028. So I'm wondering if these are simply incoherent gestures, or if you would agree with Robinson Mayer, for example, that there's a broader rational, a broader effort to maximize fossil fuel markets.
Yeah, I think both. I think they're incoherent, and there is a real resurgent, a muscular, almost bellicose kind of resurgence of fossil capitalism. And it never went away. You know, we had a moment a few years ago, and maybe we'll get to this a little at the sort of very end, where there was a real question of like, wow, we might actually really pivot from fossil capital to this kind of green capitalism. I think, but what ended up happening was not a pivot, was this kind of energy addition piece, right? And so, but it's not just like a smooth addition. It's involving the real reassertion of domination by fossil capital, right? And holding on to its position economically and politically, right? And so that in the figure of Trump, in the figure of his government, we see this real reassertion of the kind of strong arm of fossil capital, both in its ability to shape government and advance its priorities, and in its literal profitability, which is quite dramatic and quite impressive compared to especially the green sectors, right? And so it's renewed its profitability, it's really it's renewed its hold on politics, it's reasserted. And so, yes, I agree with this maximization of fossil fuels, but there are incoherences, which, you know, you've named a couple of, but you mentioned the, wanting to boost domestic consumption, but also wanting to boost exports, which actually require sort of different policies to do each of those. But there's also, even on a more basic level, perhaps, like the desire for really cheap oil and cheap gas, but also the desire to keep the fossil fat cats happy with high prices and profitability. Like, fossil fuel executives don't want low prices. I mean, obviously, and so, you know, there's real tensions there, and there's also the fact that, like, from the finance or investment perspective, a low price environment doesn't do what Trump wants, which is a massive expansion in extractive capacity, right? Because if prices are low, you know, your profit margins are thinner, and you're not going to attract as much investment, and so you can't simultaneously have cheap oil and super profitable oil, or like a lot of domestic consumption and a lot of export. I mean, it's hard to square all these things, but you can definitely see that he and his cabinet are promoting like different aspects of fossil dominance simultaneously, but that there are tensions, right? One aspect of fossil dominance is mass consumption of fossil fuels, which cheapness helps. Another is like profitability and the political power that issues from that profitability, which is in tension with the cheapness, right? But these are different facets of fossils capital's power, and we can see internal contradictions there, which in a way are actually just reflected in the internal contradictions of Trump's policies.